strong.
Chapter 51. You will remember his name. Ziehua Ziyu cried for a long time before she looked at Hua Mary. Her eyes were still red, and asked, "Father, what happened after I left? Why is this?" "Stupid girl, it's over, isn't Dad good?" Hua Fengliu said softly. Yan Huajiayu turned his eyes, stood up, looked at Yi Fuxian. "What happened?" "Fairy, I blame me for not taking good care of teacher. After you left, there was a savage wave in Qingzhou City. Someone wanted to kill me. Master did it for me." Yi Fuxian still felt a little blamed, thinking that Chia Fan was in Donghai City. "Be sure to report. Don't blame Fuxian if he was forced to die in Tianyao Mountain at that time. You know his father has a bad temper, and of course he wants to help him take revenge. But father is useless, he failed to kill the enemy, and gave himself to hanging." Hua Fengliu said with a smile, as if he didn't really care. "Is that so?" Hua Jiu asked Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian nodded gently. Hua Ziyu's tears spilled again, went to Yi Fuxian's side, stretched out his hand, gently held Yi Fuxian, and put his head on Yi Fuxian's body, saying, "Who made you put yourself in danger, if what are you doing?" His voice was still crying, thinking of his father being wiped out after leaving. Yi Fuxian almost died, and felt a moment of fear in his heart. Yi Fuxian was gently held by Hua Jiu, only feeling the warmth flowing in his heart, and gently stretched out his hand. Yi Fuxian also gently hugged the girl in front of him. He swore that he would never let her do this again. Cry sadly. Tang Wan saw this scene not far away and her heart trembled. It turns out that the goddess in the hearts of many people in Donghai Zugong has really been deceived. If this scene is known to the people in Donghai Zugong, I don't know how many people have the desire to kill Yi Fuxian, but he knows that I don't know how many young people in Donghai Zugong want to be closer to Wajiayu. I haven't found a fairy, how can I be willing to die, but you said you have to compensate well. Yi Fuxian said softly. Hua Jiu looked up slightly, Mai's eyes looked at him, and then came out of his arms, said, "It has been compensated." "Ah." Yi Fuxian blinked and said, "It's over. What more do you want?" Hua Ziyu Meizu looked at Yi Fuxian. "Then hold on for a while." Yi Fuxian stepped forward, took a step back and asked, "Didn't you think of changing the subject? Who did it?" He knew that Yi Fuxian wanted to make him happy and solve the sadness. She seems to have had such a charm when she was born. She was always happy to be with him. The three moons have been around all day and night. Even though the two were always bickering and joking, they didn't know Ju already had his figure. "Will you give it to me? I will report this revenge, and I will definitely try to heal the teacher's injury." Yi Fuxian said, "This is his business, and he doesn't want to use Jiu to do these things." "Xiu, you gave it to Fu Qian, just to give this kid some motivation." Hua Fengliu also said on the side. Shi Huaji looked at his father and looked at Yi Fuxian, and said, "Then you have to do it. This can't be done, how can you marry you as a wife?" Yi Fuxian said, "Who will marry you?" Hua Jiu blushed slightly, and Zhao Yi glanced at Yi Fuxian. "Couple, do you want to pay attention to the impact? Right in front of me, there is another," Hua Fengluo said depressed. Tong Hua Jiu glanced at Tang Lan and Tang Wan behind him. His face became even redder, but Yi Fuxian said indifferently, "This is good to use." "Teacher, should we go?" Tang Wan said weakly, "This person is too shameless." "Stronger than the master," Tang Lan said softly. Then the two turned and left, leaving time for them. "Father, I want to keep you here." After crying, Hua Jiu was very disturbed by Yi Fuxian. The sadness disappeared, but it was impossible to completely calm down so quickly, always a little uncomfortable. "Stupid girl, you still have to practice. Father is very good here. There is a boy named Fu Qian, and your Aunt Tang is helping to take care of him. Now that I see you again, I feel much better." Hua Fengliu laughed softly. "Then I stay here today, you mustn't kick me out." Hua Jiu said. "Okay, you stay here, it just so happens that you haven't seen Fuxian for a long time." Hua Fengliu laughed. "I don't want to see it," Hua Ji said. "Is that true?" Hua Fengliu laughed and looked at his daughter. "Of course." Hua Jiu nodded. "Hey, I'm sad." Yi Fuxian sighed. "Well, I thought of you with all my heart, and gave up the opportunity to talk to other girls many times. It seems that I need to understand more in the future. Are you brave?" Hua Jiu's beautiful eyes immediately turned around, looking at Yi Fuxian excitedly. "Do you want me?" Yi Fuxian asked with a smile. "Dad, is he stalking flowers along the way?" Hua Jiu asked Hua Fengliu, and Yi Fuxian blinked. Yan Hua looked at Yi Fuxian with a smile, and saw Yi Fuxian's pitiful expression, and smiled. "This is honest." Fu Yi Chan was relieved. "Then I think about it from time to time." Hua Jiu's voice was very low, but Yi Fuxian still heard it. Seeing the shameful expression of the elf, it felt worthwhile to let go of the forest. "I will practice." The rest of the life next to me couldn't listen, and walked towards the bamboo forest behind the attic. Do you like this all the time? Many people laughed when they heard the words of the rest of life. Yu Fuxian said, for the rest of my life, the beauty of the East China Sea is like a cloud. I will help you catch up if you like it. Father said I can't have the children's private affairs. The rest of his life did not return. Godly father is not here, I have the final say. Yu Fuxian shouted, and the rest of his life disappeared around the corner. There were only 3 people left in front of the attic. Under the sun, the sadness slowly faded, with a hint of warmth. However, at this moment, there was a figure that came out of the Qin garden. This man is an old man, cold and full of breath. As soon as he entered Qin garden, the temperature in Qin garden seemed to drop. A few minutes. I saw a figure descending in front of him. It was Tang Lan. When I saw Tang Lan who was in front of me, she froze and said coldly, "What are you doing here?" "My lady has been here a long time. Who have you brought?" The visitor said coldly. "You followed him." Tang Lan looked cold. "This is not called tracking." The visitor spoke coldly, his steps moving forward, as fast as lightning. "Presumptuous!" Tang Lan shouted. The entire Qin Yuan could hear his voice. Fengliu Flowers and Yu Fuxian looked at each other, raised their heads, and saw 2 figures descending here like lightning, with great momentum. Fengliu Flower. That person's eyes immediately fell onto Hua Fengliu's body, his expression cold, and he said, "How dare you set foot in Donghai City?" Nandu. Hua Fengliu saw that people looked cold. "You follow me." Hua Jiu looked at the old man who came over. "Miss, you are distinguished. How can your family be convinced that you're alone? If I was in Tokai Academy, I would not interfere with Miss doing anything, but after I come out, I will secretly protect Mrs. Safety," Nandu Ku said. "Nantu Quan, I have become an outcast, return to Donghai City, won't you give up?" Hua Fengliu said. Nandu Quan looked at him in shock, and Qin Mo's generation was really abandoned. "Since you died, I didn't care about your business, but the family compromised and let the woman accompany you for 3 years. Now that woman has passed the initial period of spiritual practice and entered a critical moment. The family does not want anyone to disturb the woman with anything." The old man said coldly. "I will accompany my father and I will return to the East China Sea Academy," Hua Jiu said coldly. "Miss, don't embarrass me, the family has already made a promise to your disobedient request." Nandu Ku said, "If you still do it, I am afraid that Donghai City will not tolerate it." "You dare." Hua Jiu looked even colder, exuding a noble majesty. "Xiu, you're back," Hua Fengliu said at this time. "Father." Hua Jiu lost his momentum, and looked back at his father, only to see Hua Fengliu with a gentle smile on his face. "Xiu, I'm fine here. You practice well in Donghai Zugong, don't remember me." Hua Jiu was a little uncomfortable, and looked at Nandoku coldly. "You treat my father like this even if he succeeds in practice, aren't you afraid that I will be liquidated?" "Miss, many things are family decisions, I don't know, but if Miss can restore the Nandu family's glory, at that time, Miss must have made a request, I believe the family will not refuse." Nandoku started. "Okay, you'll see." Hua Jiu said coldly, and then said to Hua Feng, "Father, I'm leaving." Continue. Flowers keep smiling romantically. Xiyu glanced at Yu Fuxian again. The 2 eyes were opposite, and they were a little reluctant. There are no words left. Jiu turned and went outside the garden. Nandoku didn't go. After Hua Jiu left, he looked at Hua Fengliu and said, "You know what happened in the past. In fact, your family is intolerable, but you are not qualified to enter the Nandao family, but you did. It is beyond the ability to cause the calamity ends today. Fortunately, Miss Xiyu's talent is even better, and it perfectly blends the talents of you and her mother. Therefore, the family must not let anyone influence the young lady. Practice." Sunhua looked at him indifferently. Nandu Ku looked at Yu Fuxian next to him, and said, "Who is he?" "My disciple Yu Fuxian," Hua Fengliu said. "You came to Donghai City with your disciples and want to place your hopes on him." Nandu Ku sneered ironically. "A stupid man dreamed that you were defeated at his hands back then. Now, the disciples he received are afraid. Better than your disciples," he said. Nandoku turned around and left. Seeing the departing figure, Hua Fengliu said, "One day, you will remember his name. I'm looking forward to it." Nandu Ku disappeared into the piano garden with a word. Chapter 52. Nothing more. Yu Fuxian watched all this happen and remained silent, but his heart was not as calm as his appearance. He finally met each other, and the goblin was forced to leave without long, and his mood can be imagined. "Aren't you upset?" Hua Fengliu sensed Yu Fuxian's emotions and asked in a low voice while sitting there. "Yes." Yu Fuxian nodded. "Then get stronger." Hua Fengliu closed his eyes, and he was very upset, but he had no hope. Nandu Ku was not wrong, and now his hopes were indeed set on Yu Fuxian. Of course, he knew what kind of talent Yu Fuxian had. He inherited Yu Qingdai's legacy. As long as he grew up in peace, Donghai City and Nandu family would be nothing. So he hopes that Yi Fuxian can enter the East China Sea Academy, and it is best to be seen by the characters above the 7th palace, so that he can have enough room for growth. Yi Fuxian did not respond, but there was blood flowing in his heart. For teachers and fairies, he must be strong. For the next period of time, Yi Fuxian practiced quietly in the Qin garden, and went to buy an engraving pen and a lot of engraving paper. The carving method and practicing the piano are both ways to practice, which can increase the spirit. Strength and the ability to perceive and control auras are all necessary for the growth of a mage. As for martial arts practice, he was naturally even more likely to let it go. In a dire situation, it is comparable to a true dragon giant ape. On this day, Tang Wan came to the attic where they lived, looking for Yi Fuxian and the rest of his life. Tell me the good news, Tang Wan said with a smile. What news? Yi Fuxian was a little curious. Someone at Wakir Palace asked me to tell you that you can go to Wakir Palace to train, Tang Wan said. Yi Fuxian fell for a moment, slightly confused. Supposedly the people in Wakir Palace decided to make an exception after hearing of your deeds, but your battle situation that day was only seen by Zugong disciples. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to wait too long. Perhaps you should have come to you earlier. Tang Wan said. Yi Fuxian's arrogance and the rest of his life showed that he thought it was enough to enter the 7th palace to practice, but the big people didn't see it with their own eyes. A people good, the murmur for the rest of his life, the smile on Yi Fuxian's face, and the ability to train in the East China Sea Academy meant that he was closer to the fairies, which was naturally something to be happy about. What are you talking about? Hua Fengli further wondered, why did Wakir Palace make an exception and what did they do? Seniors, do you know? I brought them to Donghai Zugong for the first time, and they caused trouble in Zugong and defeated many disciples in the Wolf Palace. The reason was because Mu Yunni said something terrible, because senior daughter knew that she had left to Donghai Zugong and find me. Tang Wan explained. The flower style showed a surprised expression, and the rush of the last interpretation did not ask carefully. Your son. Hua Fengli glanced at Yi Fuxian. This person didn't even tell him. Go. Be careful outside, don't miss me, Hua Fengli said. Teacher, we will not be in the future. You and Aunt Tang can live in the world of two people, Yi Fuxian said. Go. Hua Fengli said grimly. Let's go. Yi Fuxian was a little worried about his teacher. Relax, I'll take care of it, Tang Lan said when she came here, not knowing when. Yi Fuxian nodded. He naturally trusted Aunt Tang. Haibengdao flew from the bamboo forest, and then fell in front of Yi Fuxian. The three men walked over, then Haibengdao rose into the air. Yi Fuxian turned and waved his hand down. Your journey has just begun. Hua Fengli had a smile on her face. It seems that you really treat him as a child, so you like him, Tang Lan said. If you can really see that day, Donghai Zugong will be honored for his existence. Hua Fengli said with a smile. Tang Lan's eyes trembled, and she looked at Hua Fengli with surprise, as if it seemed that Hua Fengli had faith in Yi Fuxian. Much stronger than he had imagined. Every house in the 7th palace of the Donghai Learning Academy has practitioners with different professions. There seems to be no difference, but in fact, the 7th house has its own style, which is related to the strength behind the 7th house. The disciples taught by Wakir Palace had many madmen who fought in the name of being good at fighting. Perhaps this was why the great figures of Wakir Palace first summoned them to Wakir Palace before they saw Yi Fuxian and the rest of his life. Judging by the actions of the two of them, they were among the madmen who fought, especially their whole life, who were born for war. Yi Fuxian and the rest of his life entering the East China Sea Academy did not cause much movement. After all, there were only a few people who saw the two men fighting personally at first, and many people only heard their names but did not know them, not to mention the distance from the storm. It also passed for a while. Tang Wan took them to Wakir Palace, and several people responded to arrange a place for them, and briefly introduced them. There were no big figures from the Wakir Palace to meet them. Perhaps they wanted to see their performance at Donghai Academy. What will happen? The disciples of Donghai Zugong Wakirong live in the same area, and they have independent institutions like Qingzhou Zugong, but the environment is better. Who are you? A passerby looked at Yi Fuxian and the rest of his life with a bit of curiosity and asked, this shouldn't be a Wakir Palace disciple, I've never seen him before. Yi Fuxian, my brother for the rest of his life, he will be at the same door for a long time, and give me a lot of advice. Yi Fuxian smiled. Yi Fuxian, how familiar I am. The man muttered, then his eyes gradually widened, and then his body disappeared like a gust of wind. Soon, the news came out of the Wakir Palace, and the greedy wolf was violent not too long ago. Yi Fuxian's disciples and the rest of his life joined them in Wakir Palace. Wakir Palace came here. Is he Yi Fuxian? Is there only two glory stars? For the rest of my life, as rumored, looking at the past, I am very strong. Is it really a pure martial arts practitioner? Will my soul be hidden? It really looks pretty. Several girls whispered while watching the handsome Yi Fuxian. Many teenagers and naturally curious. Is there a library in Wicker Palace? Yi Fuxian asked Tang Wan next to him. Tang Wan shook her head and said, there is only one library building in Donghai Academy. It is located in the center of Donghai Academy. All students in the academy can enter at will, but they are not allowed to borrow books. They can only watch or copy them. Yi Fuxian nodded his head. There are too many disciples in the East China Sea Academy. If he can borrow them, it will be difficult to manage and easy to lose. Let's go to the library. Yi Fuxian said. He was now a master of a 2-star glory realm, but the spells he practiced were still relatively low level. The talent of a multi-attribute master is too extravagant. Inheritance unleashed the practice of the mage, and the two cooperated with each other to fight more effectively. Okay. Tang Wan nodded slightly, and secretly said that although this person looked cynical, he still worked very hard to study, and the first thing to come to the palace was to go to the library. Tokai Academy's library was much larger than Qingzhou Academy's, and there were no restrictions. As long as Tokai Academy students can read and copy all martial arts methods and spells at will, this point only highlights this is the strongest school in Donghe. After Yi Fuxian entered the library, he was interested in the collection of books. There are too many kinds of exercises and spells here, whether it is body or sword practice, 7 attribute spells, or rare spiritual spells, you can find them here. Even Yi Fuxian saw phonics, matrix formations, engravings, etc. Here. No wonder the teacher wants to let himself practice here. As a result, the next few days, Yi Fuxian had been soaking into Kai Zugong's library, not only looking at the practice and incantations. At the same time, news of Yi Fuxian's training in Wicker Palace spread, and the greedy Wolf Palace people found out. They looked for Yi Fuxian everywhere, and finally found him in the library. In front of a table in the Tibetan bookstore, Yi Fuxian was quietly reading a book. The party came aggressively, and one of them shouted, Yi Fuxian. This person is Mu Yunqing _, is something wrong? Yi Fuxian didn't raise his head. Since you joined the East China Sea Academy, shouldn't we count the last account? Mu Yunqing looked very cold. Are you going to challenge me? Yi Fuxian slowly raised his head and looked at Mu Yunqing with a playful look. Jian Muyun saw Yi Fuxian's smile stiffen, and said, I will ask someone to fight against you from Wolf Palace. Who? What is the field? Yi Fuxian asked. Mu Yun glanced around. Many people looked at this side, and suddenly didn't know how to speak. Are you still planning to go to the same group as last time? Yi Fuxian said with a smile. Now that he was a disciple of the Wicker Palace, the greedy people of the Wolf Palace could not defeat him at will. Jian Muyun's light appearance was extremely embarrassing and he said, go. He said the group left again humbled. This incident came out, many people in Donghai Zugong laughed at Mu Yunqing and greedy Wolf Palace, embarrassed. A few days later, news emerged from the palace greedy wolf. Jingyang, a palace greedy wolf disciple, took out a war book for Yi Fuxian, a Wicker Palace disciple, causing many waves. Jingyang, the Samsung Glory Destiny Mage, a young genius, was introduced directly as a disciple at the peak of the greedy Wolf Palace. He doesn't need to care about the following, but seems to be challenging Yi Fuxian to face the greedy Wolf Palace. This news entered Yi Fuxian's ears through the greedy Wolf Palace. Yi Fuxian's response left many people speechless. There was no time. I suddenly refused to accept the challenge for this reason. The greedy Wolf Palace scolded Yi Fuxian for not daring to fight and being cowardly. Regarding this, it is said that Jingyang responded to a sentence, exaggerated, and nothing more. However, this did not seem to affect Yi Fuxian's rhythm. He is still reading quietly, practicing, simple and satisfying. Chapter 53, King Luo. Yi Fuxian rarely practiced calmly and freely. He naturally didn't bother dealing with the so-called challenges. He didn't know Jingyang. No matter what the genius of the other party is, he has nothing to do with him. Defeating the other party will not only attract a lot of praise, but he can't attract much praise, but he can't. What he brings can even cause more trouble. The humiliation of the greedy Wolf Palace continued, but Yi Fuxian did not pay attention, and it did not even enter his ears. He practiced calmly and broke through. Martial arts and mage realms enter the realm of Samsung's glory level, and also practice many spells. At this time, in another courtyard where Yi Fuxian is, he is trying to match spells and martial arts. If he is good at multi-spelling, if he can combine perfect spells with arrogant martial arts abilities, he will be able to explode even more terrible combat power. He looked at him next to him and said to Yi Fuxian, in addition to the water nature of the 7 departments, you have all practiced the corresponding spells. Although Yi Fuxian can understand all attributes, he does not have the life soul of the water attribute, so the talent of the water attribute is weak, and he does not have the ability to practice the water attribute for a while. The other attribute talents are really top-notch. The source tree of the original soul world is a wood property. He also began to practice this attribute spell, although he knew that the source soul might never be released in front of people. These are all the spells I chose. It doesn't hurt to learn more. Yi Fuxian said with a smile, I have something to come out of. I may not be back today. You also try to practice and enter 4-star glory as soon as possible. Well, it should come soon. He nodded for the rest of his life. His practice was not inferior to Yi Fuxian's. Yi Fuxian was abandoned by Black Wind Carving and went straight out of the East China Sea Academy. King Luo Palace is a royal palace located in Donghai City. There were rumors that Lord Luo, the ruler of King Luo Palace, was a distant relative of the current king of the Nandu Kingdom, and there were also rumors that the imperial family favored before being sealed. However, for whatever reason, it can be banned from the king. It is the only one in Donghai City, and its status is naturally extraordinary. The Luo King Palace was impressive and belonged to a real giant. At this time, a young person came to the gates of the Luo King's palace, and it was Yi Fuxian. At this time, many people were busy outside the gates of the Luo King Palace. The lanterns were lit, and it looked like a festive atmosphere. Yi Fuxian knew that the owner of the Luo King Palace was having a birthday party. Whether it is the royal palace or the owner of the royal palace having a birthday party, it has nothing to do with Yi Fuxian. What he really had to do with was Master Luo, who was the only psychiatric healer in Donghai City who was not the person Tang told him about. This was the only thing Yi Fuxian did apart from spiritual practice today. In order to explore this situation, he always kept the teacher's injury in mind. He didn't understand why Aunt Tang said that Lord Luo would never shoot, and he didn't have the confidence to let Lord Luo take the teacher's care, but at least he knew that it was impossible to do anything. He asks that Lord Luo is very personal, lonely, handsome, birthday party every year will bring many battles. He wants to see what kind of person Lord Luo is, and see if he has a chance to help him in the future. This is what he owes the teacher, and he also promised the fairy, whether he can do it or not, he will definitely work hard for it. Hello. Yi Fuxian stepped forward and came to a servant who directed the servant to do something. The inspector glanced at Yi Fuxian. The boy is handsome and handsome. He smiled and said, "What's wrong with this young master?" "Excuse me, on the day of King Luo's birthday party, there can be a contrast of piano and dance. I'm good at piano. I don't know if I can have a chance to play the piano for Wang Yi's birthday," Yi Fuxian asked. The judge responded with a smile, "We have no shortage of piano teachers in our palace. I'm definitely better than them." Yi Fuxian continued, "Of course, if it doesn't work, is there a lack of service?" There is a strange look in the stern affairs. Yi Fu's weather is extraordinary, and it seems that it does not look like a mixed job. "This young master, what is your purpose in wanting to enter the palace?" Guanxi narrowed his eyes and asked, looking very shrewd. "I want to see some scenes of the royal palace's birthday party." Yi Fuxian's face remained unchanged and he said calmly, "But my palace has no shortage of piano teachers or other maids." The steward still refused. Although there was nothing wrong with just being with a young man, he couldn't casually enter the palace. "Hey!" At this time, just listening to the surprised voice coming, Yi Fuxian turned his eyes, and saw the two Qianying outside coming here. Both of them are beautiful girls, especially the one in front, even more extraordinary. In addition, Yi Fuxian met two people on the boat from Qingzhou City to Donghai City. "Why do you?" the woman said with surprise, thinking that it was a Pingshui meeting, but did not expect to meet here. "Miss Ziyu, your friend?" the flight attendant asked, slightly confused. "Is this boy for Miss Ziyu?" "No, Miss Ziyu is just a guest from the palace. He came to the palace yesterday." Lin Ziyu nodded, and smiled at Yi Fuxian and asked, "Why are you here?" "This young master said that he is luthier, and he wants to play at Wang Yi's birthday party." The steward next to him said that since he was Miss Ziyu's friend, naturally he couldn't be said to be doing various services. "Yes." Yi Fuxian nodded. "Let him try it." Lin Ziyu Maimu looked at the maid, and the maid nodded. "Since Miss Ziyu is speaking, then give it a try, this master, please." Sun and his entourage walked towards the palace. Lin Ziyu and Xiao He both walked beside Yi Fuxian, only listening to Lin Ziyu smile. "Didn't you come to Donghai City to study? Why did you think of coming to Wengfu to become a luthier?" "Yes, I am training in Donghai Zugong, and I want to see the world in the palace." Yi Fuxian replied with a smile. Bragging. Xiao He chuckled next to him. "When you arrived in Donghai City, the time for the spring festival has passed, and you want to attract the attention of my family, Ziyu." Xiao He doesn't talk nonsense. Lin Ziyu pouted a smile, unconcerned. Yi Fuxian shrugged when they saw the two disbelieving people, a little helpless. Each time no one believed the truth. "Yes, why are you in the palace? Are you from the Luo Palace?" Yi Fuxian asked curiously. Lin Ziyu shook her head. "The elders in my family know Lord Luo, and our descendants and grandchildren also know each other very early, so they came together before, and I can introduce some people to you." "Just that." Yi Fuxian nodded slightly. It seemed that Lin Ziyu was also a young lady from an extraordinary family. No wonder talking about temperament gives people a very elegant and comfortable feeling. "What kind of man is Mr. Luo?" Yi Fuxian asked in a low voice. Aunt Tang said that Master Luo couldn't help her. If it was because Master Luo was arrogant and indifferent, it was fine. It was very difficult for Lord Luo to make a shot. Excellent yet good, depending on the occasion, Lin Ziyu smiled. He and his entourage came to the park, someone was playing the piano, and there was a beautiful dancer. It seems that they are practicing. Of course, there is no mistake in Master Luo's birthday party, some things need to be prepared in advance. The judge went to the piano teacher and whispered a few words, then smiled at Yi Fuxian and said, "Come and try." Okay. Yi Fuxian nodded, and then sat in the position where the musician got up and gave up. When he touched the piano with 10 fingers, the temperament of the whole person seemed to change, and he was more elegant and calm at this time. Ji's long fingers twitched on the strings, and the sound of the piano sounded, and the gaze of the musician next to him flickered, his eyes glaring slightly. Along with the melodious keen yin, people's mood gradually seeped into it. Yeah, I'm embarrassed. The pianist shook his head with a smile and smiled. Keen pays attention to artistic conceptions. Although he is young, Yi Fuxian seems to have played for many years. The artistic conception was beyond his reach. He didn't know that he was just an ordinary musician. However, Yi Fuxian is a piano sound master. Even if he doesn't use piano sound magic, his artistic conception is not comparable to an ordinary piano master. In that case, the young master is here to learn the piano music that will be played tomorrow. Practice here today, how is it? Guan Shidao. Okay, thank you. Yi Fuxian smiled. Ziyu, why are you here? At this time, a group of teenagers in the distance came to this side. I was still looking for you before. How can Yaxing watch the practice here? Yi Fuxian and others turned their eyes away. All these figures are extraordinary temperament, maybe all the children of the tyrants, or Wangfu Zhongzhong. A friend of mine is here to play the piano, come and listen. Lin Ziyu smiled and said your friend. Someone looked at Yi Fuxian. Well, I'm Luthia, and I want to play at Wang Yi's birthday party tomorrow. Lin Ziyu nodded. That's the problem. A boy was disinterested when he heard that it was a Luthia, and said, Zhu Yue, let's go. Someone will come. Okay. Lin Ziyu nodded slightly, waved her hand at Yi Fuxian and left. Yi Fuxian also smiled and greeted him. Who? Lin Ziyu turned around and asked. Zhou Mu. The man said with a smile. Lin Ziyu's eyes brightened slightly, and I heard that the man is now a summoner of the 5-star glory realm, and his talent is very high, which is no less than his master. By the way, how did you become Luthia's friend? A young girl asked. I met by chance, Lin Ziyu responded. Is it because the others look good? The young girl joked with a smile. Lin Ziyu smiled and didn't speak. It seems that Yi Fuxian looks good. When he plays the piano, he looks more handsome. Unfortunately, he is only a pianist and seems to be exaggerated and about to lie, but maybe because of his strong pride, Lin Ziyu thought. Lin Ziyu did not invite Yi Fuxian to participate in the people group meeting, nor did they introduce them. He naturally saw that they were all noble disciples, and he was a kinist, apparently not in the group. Circle. Of course, Ping Shui just met. Yi Fuxian naturally didn't mind. Lin Ziyu felt very good for him. Moreover, the purpose of his coming to the palace was not to get to know the children. Chapter 54, Royal Palace Banquet. Master Luo's birthday celebration has been arranged, and the piano and dance have been arranged. After Yi Fuxian learned to play the piano, the musician left, and the supervisor also ordered some precautions for tomorrow. Yi Fuxian and a group of women stayed here for training. The women in this group are all excellent in appearance and outstanding performances, especially those in the main dance. They were about 18 years old, sexy and charming, but with young and touching faces. When dancing in a long, sexy and thin skirt, it is enough to make people fall into it. Yi Fuxian lowered his head and only heard a charming voice, why not look up? He raised his head, and Yi Fuxian saw a beautiful face appear in front of his eyes, and smiled and said, Sister Miss is very charming, I am afraid that I will make a mistake. That little guy is really cute. The woman giggled, her long skirt fluttered, and flew to Yi Fuxian's piano. Would you like to gather together? The woman danced in front of Yi Fuxian's eyes, and was full of charm. It seemed like he was teasing her on purpose. It was rare to see a handsome young violinist with a handsome appearance, who felt so comfortable. Brother miss, I have a boyfriend. Yi Fuxian smiled. The woman froze, then giggled, and the women behind her also chuckled. What the little guy thinks is so beautiful. Remember, my sister is Yun Ro, but she is going to marry a great practitioner, but she has no interest in you, Yun Ro said with a smile. My name is Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian smiled slightly and continued to practice, and the party became familiar. From their mouths, Yi Fuxian explored several things. Tomorrow's birthday party, there may be many big names in Donghai City. Come to Heshu. Of course, Yun Ro only knew a limited amount. After all, in East China, if they don't have the talent to practice, even if they look good, they have a low status. In his youth, his destiny would be very bleak. After all, those who are strong in practice will be younger and live longer. On the morning of the next day, King Luo mansion came to life. Many people in the king's mansion were busy, and they started to prepare the banquet. At the same time, several people greeted the guests outside the king's mansion. Of course, this has nothing to do with Yi Fuxian. They are still practicing. From noon, the guests arrived one after another and went to the place where the banquet was. Yi Fuxian they entered early. The banquet was very popular. The position right in front of him was Lord Luo, the owner of today's birthday party. Then, there are 2 rows of guest chairs on the left and right. The closer to Lord Luo's position, the higher the status of the person who can sit there. The 2 guest rows are very wide in the middle. A low platform was set up behind. The golden carpet was laid on the ground. Clouds and leaves soften the sky. They are set here to add a little color to the birthday party. Yaxing in front of the guests. Before the guests entered, the Kinwu dance had already started. A group of laughter came. Lin Ziyu and Xiao He and other young girls came here first, sat at the back, and Lin Ziyu smiled at Yi Fuxian. Ziyu, a rare boy in our family, unfortunately, is a pianist. Xiaohei chuckled in Lin Ziyu's ear, and Lin Ziyu looked at him with a wide look. Don't talk nonsense. What are you talking about? Asked a handsome boy next to him with a smile. Brother Luo, it's nothing. Lin Ziyu shook her head. Ziyu, I heard that the young violinist was introduced to the palace by your friend. Is that your friend? Asked the boy called Luo. I've seen her twice. Now that she wants to go to the palace to see the world, I will help her through. Brother Luo won't mind. Lin Ziyu smiled. It's just a trivial matter. I can keep it in the palace for the pianist. The boy laughed. Ask him if he wants after dinner. Lin Ziyu smiled. The boy nodded and left this side. Xiaohei beside him whispered, Little master seems to have some meaning to you. You girl, talk nonsense. Lin Ziyu was helpless. However, even though he is not as good as him, his status is in the sky. Xiao He was still smiling, and Lin Ziyu could only tell him that this girl liked to joke around. Young girls love imagination, but Yi Fuxian naturally doesn't know their thoughts. At this time, a majestic figure came over, walking in a hurry, his eyes bright and energetic. After he arrived, many people shouted, Master Wang. I am Master Luo, the host of today's birthday party. Yi Fuxian looked at Lord Luo behind and looked dignified, with his own majesty. I haven't seen her for a few days, and Lord Wang is becoming more and more beautiful. I saw someone step forward, with great majesty. Prince, Lin came to celebrate your birthday. The figures came one after another, greeting each other. Cheer! Someone came to celebrate Wang Yi's birthday. At this time, a heartbreaking voice came. Only a few figures came forward. Master Xiaofu is polite. Master Luo also responded with a smile. Even though he was banned, he had no real power. In name, Qiafeng was the most powerful person in Donghai Prefecture. Of course, in fact, Qiafeng is also it is still far from enough. For example, even if the former master of the Nandu Kingdom, the Nandu family, even if it declines, but at the end of the year, how can it be compared to the host, the strength of the 7th Palace Donghai Zugong, and many another powerful family? Looking straight at Qiafeng. There was a young man behind Qiafeng, arching in front of Master Luo. Qiafan Chia. Look at Wang Yi. Chia Shi's nephew is getting more and more amazing, Luo praised. This kid is idle all day, Wang Yi praised in this way, he is afraid to be arrogant again. Qiafeng smiled brightly. At this time, Yi Fuxian, who was playing the violin, looked up and looked at the other side. When he saw Qiafan's moment, a cold chill flashed across his eyes. It just so happened that he met Qiafan here. As soon as Qiafeng and Qiafan took their seats, Qiafan's eyes began to appreciate the beauty of dancing. When Yunru looked, a glint of desire flashed across his eyes, but then, Yu Guang looked at the youth behind him, his eyes couldn't help slightly coagulating, then narrowed his eyes. Walking in the palace, he even saw Yi Fuxian. He didn't die that day on Tianyao Mountain. The crazy snow ape let go. Yi Fuxian naturally saw Qiafan looking at him. The two eyes are opposite. He clearly saw the playfulness in Qiafan's eyes. In Qiafan's eyes, I am afraid that he is just a small person who can be needed at will. Even if he is still alive, Qiafan I don't really care at all. For the owner of Xiaofu in Donghai, will he care about Yi Fuxian of Qingzhou City, the only harp demon supporting Yi Fuxian? Now he is afraid that it is lost. But his uncle, because he wants to deal with the harp demon life is lost in the hands of the snow ape. What do you see? Qiafeng Dao. Nothing, I saw an interesting person. Qiafan said with a sneer, Qin Mo's disciple, it is very interesting to become a pianist in Wangfu. Yi Fu Tianping played the piano in his state of mind. He saw that Qiafan was not worried. He had a student nameplate of the East China Sea Academy. In the palace, all eyes were on him. God, it was impossible to dare to kill him. The Nandu family came to celebrate Wang Yi's birthday. At this time, a voice came, and Lord Luo looked at the walking person, then burst out laughing. Brother Nan Dao is here. The two, middle-aged and a child, came to Nandu Wenchen and Nandu Kai on behalf of the Nandu family. They were a pair of father and son. They had an extraordinary status in the Nandu family. They both came on behalf of the Nandu family, considered the importance of Lord Luo. Master Wang, don't come here. Nandu Wenchen laughed, and Master Luo personally guided him to sit at the very front. Brother Wenchen is also here. At this time, a voice came again, and Nandu Wenchen, who had just sat down, stood up again, looking at the party walking towards this side. How did these two get together? Nandao Wenshan said with a smile. When they meet each other on the street, they go together. One of them looks like a crown jade, but he still looks amazing in a simple shirt. He has great taste, and the person next to him is the same. Amazing, was an energetic old man who smiled at Lord Luo. Oldness represents the East China Sea Academy to congratulate Wang Yi on his birthday. You're welcome. Lord Luo raised his hand, and then guided the two men to the chair, the two of whom sat at the front. The group in front of me laughed and laughed, seemingly of equal status. Senior painter and Wang Yi are friends, and come to celebrate Wang Yi's birthday every year. It is said that the realm of the senior painting artist is deepening day by day, and the people who come with him are the big figures of Zibai Palace of the Tokai Academy. Behind him is Zhou Mu. 5-star glory summoners and young geniuses are truly extraordinary. It is said that Huo Sheng intends to match Zhou Mu with the Nandu family. Predecessors Huo Sheng wanted to make up for the regrets of that year, but this time, the little daughter of the Nandu family stands out more in terms of appearance and talent. The Nandu family is very self-serving and does not intend to let her involve the children's personal affairs. Many people whispered behind their backs, and the young masters were also whispering something. The voice was very low, but Yi Fuxian heard a lot behind him. His eyes were waiting for a group of people, especially the middle-aged figure with an extraordinary face. He erased the teacher's soul. Is the painting a saint? He Huosheng was actually Lord Luo's friend. He finally understood why Aunt Tang said it was impossible. In my opinion, there is no hope for Lord Luo here. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Injured teacher does not know when he will be fine. Besides the paintings, there were also people from Tokai Zugong and the Nandu family. The big man in the Nandu family doesn't know what the language of reconciliation is. Chapter 55, Couture Feather. The guests arrived, and the banquet opened. The elders were in one circle, and the youth were in another. Apart from offering congratulations and a few polite words, they discussed some of the interesting things in Donghai City today, or what happened in Donghai Province. Unknowingly, some people mentioned Qingzhou City. It is said that the man's body appeared in Qingzhou City, and Chia Qian's nephew also left alone. I wonder if this is what happened. Someone asked, looking at Chia Fan. Jains naturally refer to Yi Qingdai, but Yi Qingdai is a taboo character in Eastern Divine China. Therefore, in this public occasion, people even avoided the taboo and immediately mentioned his name. This is true, but there is a demon lord and even a high-level snow demon guarding there. No one can enter. My brother was killed in the hands of the demon beast. Chia Feng said. The words of the host Xiafu are true. The little girl was so excited that she ran to Qingzhou City. No one could get there. It is said that the road was blocked by monsters. Lin Ziyu's father also said. Many people nodded. In fact, many big men have sent people to Qingzhou City, and they haven't gotten anything. If the level of the demon lord is even higher, Mo said that we are afraid that it has nothing to do with the Nandu country. Some people sighed. Yi Fuxian was very depressed when he heard this, that senior snow ape would not come out of the mountain, otherwise he would be cautious everywhere in Donghai City, and Nandao Guo could walk to the side. He wondered if he had a chance to go back and persuade senior snow ape. Brother Lin, Ziyu's nephew, is now 16 years old, and it has become even more beautiful. Lord Luo looked at Lin Ziyu in the crowd behind, his eyes slightly bashful. The king is ridiculous, Father Lin smiled. Did you ever get married? Lord Luo asked with a smile. Never, but this girl is still young, and now she is still using her energy for spiritual practice, not worrying, Father Lin replied. Yes, but at this banquet, it seems that there are many handsome young men, but they can contact, Lord Luo said with a smile. Speaking of young Junji, painting the holy disciple Zhou Mu is said to be a 5-star glory. Father Lin looked at Zhou Mu behind the sacred painting. The teacher taught well. Zhou Mu smiled and greeted. Nandu Kai next to brother Wenchen is no worse than this kid. The holy painter looked at Nandu Wenchen, and was somewhat polite. This kid is a little older, although his talent is also good, but it seems to be worse than Zhou Mu, and he has to work harder. Nandu Wenchen rode. Is he okay? Huo Sheng suddenly asked, and Nandao Wenshan's eyes stagnate, and she shook her head with a bitter smile. Sister Mei is still the same. I heard that her daughter is back and she's really amazing. My students are always annoyed because I want to see her. Huo Sheng continued, and everyone showed a different color. Huo Sheng really wanted to match his disciples and Nandao. She doesn't mind that the daughter of the family is Qin Mo's daughter, maybe the House of Love and the Black Bar. After all, Hua Sheng's affection for that person is very sincere. XCU is really amazing, and now he is training in Tokai Academy, Zihai Palace. Nan Dao Wenshan smiled. Yi Fuxian heard this, and there was a slight wave in his heart. Hua Sheng wanted to match his disciples' reconciliation. Moreover, Nandu Wenshan seems to be XCU's brother and sister. Ziyu's talent is in my Zibai Palace, and it is also the best. It is difficult to find competitors in the entire East China Sea Palace. The old man from Zibai Palace said with a smile. He spent his training in Zibai Palace. He naturally knows a lot. Many of you praise one person at a time, but I really want to see this Nandu family's money. Lord Luo smiled boldly. Is it Hua Ziyu? Chia Fan's mouth smiled evilly, and he glanced at Yi Fuxian who was playing the piano. On the shore of Qingzhou Lake in Qingzhou City, he saw the relationship between Hua Ziyu and Yi Fuxian with his own eyes. What if the Nandu family finds out that there is a vague ambiguity between Hua Jiayu and Yi Fuxian? Thinking of this, Chia Fan had an attractive smile on his face. Of course, there are many ways to pinch Yi Fuxian, it doesn't have to be. If he spoke Hua Ji on this occasion, he might have an unclear relationship with Yi Fuxian. I am afraid that they will offend the Nandu family. The big families are very concerned about the face. Now Hua Jiayu is the most important pearl of the Nandu family. They are afraid that no stain will befall him. He seemed to feel something. Yi Fuxian looked at Chia Fan's side. At this time, people are talking about Hua Ji. He immediately understood what Chia Fan was thinking, and he couldn't help raising his eyebrows. Chia Fan is a man who has a dangerous character. He has been taught in Qingzhou City. I have the opportunity to visit God with comments. Nandu Wenshan smiled when he heard Lord Luo's words. Don't you talk about comments all the time. Many years have been here today, and God is so elegant, should you show it? Something. Yes, I can see the genius of my youth in the East China Sea. Someone echoed with a smile. Lord Luo also seemed to have some interest, and then he said, if this is the case, if anyone is willing to show something, and show a few hands to the elders present, if I am happy, I will be rewarded. Shi Yue, how did you come first? Lord Luo's eyes fell on Lin Shi Yue. Jilin Ziyu blinked, then smiled and nodded, and Lianbu stepped out, stood in the middle of the crowd, and said, Master, Ziyu is ugly. Speaking, his body was surrounded by a water-based aura, and his hands danced slowly. The water-based aura followed his hands and merged in the air. After the big birthday, he slowly went towards Lord Luo, and only disappeared when he reached Lord Luo. Ziyu girl has already become a mage from the world of Samsung's glory. So fast, so much fun. Praise Lord Luo. Thank you Grandpa for your compliment. Lin Ziyu smiled and then stepped back. I dance for God. A young man stepped out, wearing a sword on his body, and then the sword in his hand danced. The sword was born in heaven and earth. Each passing sword will leave a blow in the air. When the sword ends, the sword ends. It condensed but did not spread, and it became the font of the four swords. Okay. Many people smiled and sighed. After that, the young people stepped forward one after the other and congratulated Lord Luo in various clever ways. Sister Hua, didn't your disciple, Zhou Mu, show some hands? Someone said with a smile, painting Hua's surname. You go, Saint whispered. Yes, teacher. Zhou Mu nodded and walked forward, wrote in his hand, and then spread a large piece of paper on the golden carpet. He saw his body crouch down a little and started painting. It is not easy to look at Zhou Mu's photos. Drawing a holy disciple, it seems to be a feast for the eyes of today. There was a teenager who greatly admired Zhou Mu. I've never seen a summoner shot, I don't know what it is. There were girls with beautiful eyes flashing and staring at Zhou Mu. Zhou Zumu's painting speed is very fast and his style is extraordinary. Lord Luo praised. Brother Hua, you are such a disciple, you already have everyone's style. Of course. The surrounding people echoed and admired, even if Yun Ro and their group were going to dance to admire the eyes. Yi Fuxian lowered his head and touched the piano, all around him watching. I think that painting masters and sages are old rivals and rivals of love. I took the servant of such a figure, but I can imagine the glory of this generation of demon king. If it is not abolished, I am afraid that it will be like a holy painting tonight. Admired, thinking about such a loophole, is even more pathetic for the teacher. Zhou Zhumu made a painting. Yi Fuxian fiddled with the piano, one for painting the holy disciple, and one for the devil piano disciple, but everyone's eyes were on Zhou Mu. Finally, the painting was finished, and I saw a fire phoenix fly out of the painting, covered with fire, circled the sky, sent a phoenix, and flew to Lord Luo to dance. Okay. Extraordinary. The phoenix symbolizes auspicious signs. It is indeed a small painting master. Everyone praised him, and Lord Luo also smiled with admiration and said, there are many gifts. Thank you, Grandpa. Zhou Mu slumped slightly, then backed away. When I see Zhou Mu, I think of other people. A few days ago, Nandao went to Keene Garden and saw the flowers. Nandao Wenchen said lightly, and everyone's eyes were on him. Donghai City. However, Hua Fengliu is now a wasteful person, protected by Tang Lan, and has also accepted a disciple. Abandoned. Everyone showed a touch of strange color, and the eyes of the painting also fluctuated slightly, saying, too bad. Too bad, the flowers are not in vain, and I'm afraid I don't have the face to appear in front of your painting, sage, someone said with a smile. Yes, Hua Fengliu has no control over himself and takes his own humiliation. I didn't expect to be an outcast and come back with a face. Can a disciple be cultivated? When I met Zhou Mu, I was afraid to turn around. Now sending people under the fence is still delusional. Many people have spoken, mocked the master of painting. Chia Shiafan's eyes fell on Yi Fuxian, and the sense of joking grew stronger. He had to see if Yi Fuxian would continue to huddle there. At the time when people were laughing, the style of the harp suddenly changed, and the harp was gradually higher than the bass, more happy and gradual, like fairy music. Gradually, Yunru and other dancing people were trapped in the harp and the ladder. More and more free, the long skirt fluttered like a fairy. In the sound of the piano, the teenager gradually felt excited, staggered, talked and laughed, and the elders were all interested, and the whole banquet seemed to be pushed to the top by the piano. What is this song? Hua Sheng suddenly noticed, looking at Yi Fuxian. Not only him, but the big guys found the same thing. Their emotions were even affected by the sound of the piano. I looked at the teenagers, and they looked very excited. The women on stage were immersed in the dance music and couldn't break away. After the stage, a handsome young man played the piano quietly, as if he was independent. The young man has a handsome face, and even compares the young people at the banquet. When he plays the piano, he has magic power in his body, and he is naturally integrated into the piano music. Chu Yuik, who are you? The painting's eyes suddenly became sharp, and a voice interrupted the sound of the piano, and everyone was aware of the mood, and couldn't help but look at the name in shock. Handsome teenage luthier. I saw the boy slowly looking up. His eyes were clear and clean, without a hint of humility. His eyes looked forward to Master Luo, and the boy slowly said, Student Yi Fuxian, couture feathers, and Master appreciates Wang Yi for congratulating him. Chapter 56, Please advise. The boy's voice was not loud, but he was strong, and for a moment, the wine party was silent. Yin Fuxian, a disciple of the Keen Demon, wears a feather, and congratulates God on his birthday. Violinist is actually a piano demon disciple, neon feather jacket, so that everyone is caught up in the piano sound atmosphere. We can see that the piano atmosphere sounds strong. Especially young people and dancing people, if not distracted by the painting, they are still immersed in the atmosphere of the piano and music. Yun Rumei looked at Yi Fuxian in shock. This handsome young man who likes to joke seems to have a lot to do, and what he played turned out to be a prestigious palace dance, Feathers. It is said that if this song is performed by a strong piano master, playing can make people fall into fantasy and cannot escape. Lin Lingxiu and Co. He also looked at Yi Fuxian. It turned out that he was not an ordinary musician, but a disciple of the piano demon. He said so. Is he a violin master? Yi Fuxian, a young man training at Takai Zugong, muttered. The name was familiar, and then he seemed to think of something. He looked at Yi Fuxian in shock. Could it be that he was very famous in Takai Zugong a few days ago? A Yi Fuxian. Hua Sheng and Lord Luo both looked at Yi Fuxian. Obviously, the disciple of the devil piano actually appeared at the banquet, and he was simply luthier. If it wasn't Nandu Wenchen who mentioned the devil's piano, everyone would be ironic. Maybe will he continue to play quietly? Town and Mountain looked at Yi Fuxian and heard Nanduku say that Kinmo seems to have high hopes for this disciple. It's great to see how he looks today. At this time, the banquet was rather quiet. The appearance of the Wukan demon disciples was a bit sudden. Chia Shiafan looked at Yi Fuxian's heart and sneered. He actually dared to jump out. But at this time, Yi Fuxian stood up and bowed slightly to the big man in Zihai Palace of the East China Sea Academy, saying, Yi Fuxian, a disciple of Wakir Palace, met the elders of Zhu Palace. Are you a disciple of the Wakir Palace? The big man in Zihai Palace turned his eyes away. Are those disciples training in the Wakir Palace? Obviously, he didn't pay attention to Yi, a famous disciple of Donghai Zugong, some time ago. Fuxian received training at Wakir Palace not too long ago. Yi Fuxian took out his identity plate, and the big man in Zivai Palace nodded slightly, and said nothing. At this moment, Chia Fan's face suddenly became ugly. Yi Fuxian trained at the East China Sea Academy. I have this level of relationship, and in public places like Wangshu Yan, I am afraid that no one can treat him. Even if the big man in Zivai Palace didn't like Yi Fuxian very much, but since he was a disciple of Donghai Zugong, as long as he sat there, everyone should consider his influence. Lin Ziyu's eyes staring at the handsome young man standing in front of Gukan in a daze. The thought of Yi Fuxian telling him to train in the East China Sea Academy, he thought it was Yi Fuxian who was lying and boasting. At this time, Yu Fuxian wasn't lying. He was training at the Tokai Academy. However, he and Yu Fuxian came to Donghai City by boat together. At that time, the East China Sea Academy had passed the Spring Festival examination, so he and Xiaohei thought Yu Fuxian was lying. Then, there is only one possibility for Yu Fuxian to enter the East China Sea Academy. The great people above the Wakir Palace Chinese Academy are rewarded. He made an exception to allow him to train in the Wakir Palace. This of course means that he clearly knows and means Yu Fuxian's talent. Probably much stronger than the average Tokai Academy student. Donghai Learning Academy is the best place to study and practice in Donghai. The young people came from Qingzhou City and were welcomed in person. Everyone felt a little strange when they saw this scene. There is no need to say much about the excellent paintings of Zhou Mu's disciples. Now the disco student walked out, and as soon as he entered the scene, he stung people in a fur costume and then revealed his identity as a student of Tokai Academy. Obviously, this is not an ordinary teenager. In this case, it seems quite interesting. Chink is good. How is your teacher now? Lord Luo said lightly. His voice was neither happy nor angry. Yu Fuxian frankly lived in the Neon Feather, and he was frank. He was the prince of the prince's mansion, and today was the prince's birthday party. Demeanor. The teacher became a victim of dangerous criminals. Now he has difficulty moving, but he returned to his former residence, Qinyuan, to cultivate his mind and spirit. He did not ask for foreign affairs, but he felt comfortable. Yu Fuxian calmly opened his mouth. Chia Fan's eyes were very sharp, which scolded him. Everyone looked at Yu Fuxian. The young man spoke, and he did not leak water. Qin Mo returned to his home to cultivate his cultivation, regardless of foreign affairs, and the cultivation was abandoned, so it was not difficult for him to disturb him. Today's birthday banquet, I want to calm the piano and add fun to the birthday banquet. I don't dare to interfere, but I heard that many people embarrassed my teacher. Yu Fuxian looked at the others and continued, although I have ordinary talent and low strength, I can't see the teacher being insulted and insulted. Therefore, the person who verbally insulted my teacher, Yu Fuxian, is not talented, and wants to see how good the descendants are. Cultivated by your predecessors. He said. He paused a little, looked at those who had previously humiliated the teacher with words, and said, please advise. In the 16th year of his youth, facing many great figures in the East China Sea, his voice was calm, not humble, but thunderous, and the waves suddenly appeared. At the king's palace birthday party, the teenagers showed their popularity and complimented each other, but at this time, the children playing the piano quietly came out and challenged them. With this courage, he did not insult Qin Mo's style. The banquet was silent, and Yunru, Lin Ziyu, and the other people who met Yu Fuxian looked at him as if they really knew the boy at this moment. Before that, they had no idea what he was like. Faces of the people who used to sing Harlequin Sooty songs are a little embarrassed. The young people spoke politely and in an extraordinary way, which made him even more embarrassed. I am now challenged, and certainly not happy. How did you cultivate for the kingdom? Lord Luo asked. If Yu Fuxian was too strong, it would be better to remind those people that he was better off not being beaten. Samsung Junior glory broke through a few days ago. Yu Fuxian responded calmly, and Lord Luo nodded gently, looking at the people. While Samsung's glory days at this age are good, it's not that great. The offspring are not bad. I'd like to take advice. I saw one person coming out of the crowd, but the former sword repairman, who was on par with Yu Fuxian, and the Samsung glory swordsman. Okay, regardless of your fight, someone will be there to protect you from the side. Lord Luo said lightly. Many big men are here, and there is a lot of space in the middle of the banquet. Even if it spreads to the side, the people next to it will be able to block the wave. Yes. The boy drew his sword and stood before Yu Fuxian. I saw Yu Fuxian sitting slowly. Yunru and others around him retreated, leaving Yu Fuxian alone in front of Gukan. Someone verbally humiliated Qin Mo's teacher and he is Qin Mo's disciple, and naturally fights with Qin. Hakan sounds, the atmosphere changes, and instantly brings people into a beautiful mood, as if coming to the desolate mountains. Qinyuan magic. Everyone looks earnest. Although the previous song of the feather costume contained a strong artistic conception, actually Yu Fuxian did not put spiritual power into it, but played it with an ordinary game. But at this moment, just one shot, the atmosphere is born, bringing people into it, the real magic of the piano sound. Youth sword repaired. His body was fast, and he ran straight to Yu Fuxian, but listening to the sound continuously in his ears, it was as if there was a tremendous force penetrating his eardrums, straight into his mind. He only felt his body. In the desolate ancient mountains, quiet and desolate, he ran forward, and Yu Fuxian sat in front of him and touched the piano. Spiritual attack. He knew that he had been affected by Qin Yin's spell, and the sword in his hand raised a terrifying flame which was actually a fire-type sword refinement. The body jumped, slashed with the sword in both hands, and rumbled like thunder. The thick flame was like a blazing sun, splitting everything and cutting into Fufu's Yu Fuxian. There was a faint sound of long yin. Yu Fuxian's 10-finger movements were almost dizzying. He frantically plucked the strings, and saw that he was raising his hand and waving. In the mind of the Jiangxiu boy, he suddenly saw a real dragon moving towards him. A roar came, and a powerful howling dragon shattered the void, tore the fire, broke the sword, and pounded on it. Then, at the banquet, people saw the violent teenager Jian Ziu who jumped at Yu Fuxian and released a sword skill directly from the air, and fell to the ground in alert. As soon as Wu Can's voice trembled, Yu Fuxian weakly opened his mouth and looked at the people in front of him, saying, "You insulted my teacher, but the junior you cultivated, only this strength." Chapter 57, Battle Saint Disciple. Xi Yu Fuxian's voice was like a loud slap, which made Demon Can's face scorn before becoming hot and gloomy. The king's palace birthday party, painting sages attended. They praised that disarming Qin Moban is only a rare and trivial matter. However, who would have thought that Qin Mo's disciples were at the banquet and had extraordinary talent, and were invited to fight into the place? The young man sitting in front of Gukan had clear eyes and a hint of frivolity. Wu Yunru and other beautiful women's eyes were a little stupid looking at her back. It turned out that the young musician had such a bright light. Lin Ziyu and Xiao He also felt Yu Fuxian's superiority. They only knew the person who was defeated by him. They weren't weak at all, but were killed by the sound of the piano. It can be seen that Yu Fuxian is strong. Lin Ziyu thinks that if she comes to the field, I am afraid that the closure is the same. The banquet became silent again. Although it was only a fight, it seemed that it could not represent anything, but the youth would not advance when their minds were hot. Qin Yin's spell belongs to the spiritual attack and is directly overbearing. The defeated teenager Jian Ziyu is also a mage of the Samsung Glory World, which means that his mental strength is not weak, but he is injured when Qin Yin is not at his peak. This meant that only those who practiced martial arts, or a mage level lower than the Samsung Glory level, did not need to advance. If the mental strength is not strong enough, facing Yu Fuxian's piano voice spell will only be seconds. It seems that there are several successors of Demon Qin. Who else wants to go up to teach? Lord Luo said lightly. Although his tone still seemed calm, he was certainly not happy in his heart. Today is his birthday. The student grabbed the spotlight. If Yu Fuxian was a friend, he would be fine, but he is a disciple of the piano demon. Since he had a good relationship with the painting saint, he was naturally not very good with the piano demon. What's more, Yu Fuxian said a word, but hit the faces of many people. These people came to celebrate his life. But Yu Fuxian's appearance was honest and unscrupulous from start to finish, and they couldn't be picky about their matters. Is it impossible for them, the parents, to directly target teenagers? Therefore, the best ending was that Yu Fuxian was defeated by the boys present. I will teach. A voice came out, and a young man stepped out of the crowd, wearing a gold-colored Chinese suit, with an extraordinary temperament. It is Zhu King, a mage with the two properties of thunder and fire, and a 4-star glory world. Yu Fuxian's piano sound spell can withstand it, and once Fuxian's piano sound spell doesn't affect the opponent, then defeat must be Yu Fuxian. Zhu King, master of 4-star glory, Zhu King said to Yu Fuxian. Help. Yu Fuxian replied, without losing his temper. When the word fell, he lowered his head and hit the strings again, as if there was no one else in front of him. The cymbal sounded, but the brows frowned slightly, and the melody sounded chaotic, seemingly out of tune, without the same mood as before. Heavenly Demon Dance. At first glance the painting is a flash of strangeness. He and Qin Mo were old opponents. He was quite familiar with Qin Di's attacking tone. The previous song was Kangshan Long Yin, and this song is a devil dance. The music seems chaotic, but in fact, it is more difficult to handle. Zhu Qing's dual aura thunder and fire resounded around his body. Two auras flowed wildly between heaven and earth, resonating with his spiritual power. But at this moment, the chaotic sound of the piano continued to enter his ears, allowing him to develop an irritable mood. His spirit seemed unable to concentrate. He communicated with Reiki and prepared to release the spell, and he felt that Reiki's control was not so free. The release of the spell required spiritual power to accurately control the aura convergence spell. If there was a slight error, the spell could not be condensed. Therefore, everyone found a strange sight. Roam around. What is it? Everyone's eyes showed a strange color. The piano sound magic seemed to only target one person. All the invisible sonic power was heading towards Zhu King. What everyone heard at the banquet was the chaotic sound of the piano, but the music that Zhu King heard was a piano sound incantation containing spiritual attacks, and the magic of heaven and earth dancing. Zhu King stood still. Her face gradually became very embarrassed, and even sweat appeared on her forehead, and the atmosphere seemed a little strange. Wushan Devil Flurry is not a direct attack like Kangshan Longyan, but it affects the release of the spell, and is definitely the master's main enemy. As Qin Yin continued, Zhu Qing's mental strength became increasingly difficult to concentrate, and she almost broke her will. Such a battle was too uncomfortable. He had never experienced it before. Of course, this was also his first time facing Master Qin Yin. The victory has been divided. It's okay. Hua Sheng said faintly. The sound of peace seemed to contain a strong power, and once again interrupted the sound of the piano. Yi Fuxian left the strings with 10 fingers, and looked as calm as ever, just like he was playing ordinary music, but Zhu Qing still stood there, pale. His body trembled slightly, staring angrily at Yi Fuxian. He never this shame. Is this really a fight? From start to finish, Zhu Qing couldn't even take a picture, and was always distracted by the sound of the piano. If he continued, he would fall. Zhu Huasheng looked at Yi Fuxian, and Qin Mo took his disciples to Donghai City. It seemed that he had not returned to his former residence to fend for himself. Back off, Lord Luo said when he saw Zhu Qing still standing there. Zhu Qing looked embarrassed and still stepped back. When he walked, he felt only his legs shaking, no strength, he thought, just like Ruo earlier. He gave up communicating Aura's release spell, but what would happen if he approached head-on? He regretted not trying. When Yi Fuxian sat there, when no one came out, he stood up and said to Lord Luo, the younger generation is impulsive because others do not respect the words of the teacher, bothering Wang Yaxing, and I hope that Wang is not to blame, the younger generation pension. I have already scattered the ground, do I want to retreat with the whole body? At this time, just listening to the voice of indifference, everyone's eyes turned, looking at the young man next to the painting, suddenly staring. In the past, the painting demon wiped out Demon Qin. Today, Demon Kan's disciple is furious, and will it be the holy disciple teaching him? The eyes of these teenagers are very hot. It seemed that only Zhou Mu could help them get out of this bad breath. Yi Fuxian's piano sound spell is effective for martial arts masters and practitioners. You want to fight? Yi Fuxian looked at Zhou Mu. Zhou Mu, 5-star glory world, I am taller than you shouldn't fight, but you don't have anyone in your eyes, so you have to take a picture, you have to say that I tricked you. Zhou Mu said, stood up and walked to Yi Fuxian. Everyone's eyes fell on him, then he sneered and looked at Yi Fuxian. If he was left like this, and those who did not insult Qin Demon with words, the teenagers present would be extremely shameless. However, now that Zhou Mu had taken the picture, everything was a foregone conclusion. Jaylin Ziyumai's eyes looked at the two figures. Yi Fuxian has made her very dazzling, but at this time the opponent is Zhou Mu. She hopes that Yi Fuxian will not fight. Zhou Zhumu's realm is higher than Yi Fuxian's, and it is very embarrassing to avoid war. Then fight. While Lin Ziyu was thinking, Yi Fuxian's voice came out, and then he sat down again. At that time, the teacher was defeated by the painting master. With his current strength, it is naturally impossible to ward off the painting, but to deal with Shepherd Zhou, when the battle is possible. After Yi Fuxian sat down, the harp sounded again. Zhou Mu also squatted on the ground, using his hand as a pen. The aura gathered at his fingertips, and was depicted directly with the aura. He painted the goshawk, lifelike, and the harp sounded, but the 5-star glory, the realm strength and mental strength were also very strong, and continued to paint without interruption. I immediately Kang Yingcheng, flew from the ground, and slaughtered straight at Yi Fuxian. I was amazed at everyone when I saw this scene. This is the power of the summoner. The sound of the piano was getting worse. Yi Fuxian quickly strummed the strings with his 10 fingers, and a series of piano sounds directly attacked the goshawk, making the goshawk's body slightly damaged and torn. However, the goshawk knows no pain at all, and no mental strength at all. He will not stop attacking. In the end, even if half of his body was left, the goshawk still descended in front of Yi Fuxian, his claws torn off. Yi Fuxian waved his hand, the goshawk's body exploded, but at the same time, Guken was crushed, a strong wind blew, Yi Fuxian's shirt flooded and his hair flooded. Hard to beat. Everyone looked at this scene for a while, then they all showed excitement. Zhou Mu is worthy of Zhou Mu. Yi Fuxian is a piano master. How can I fight without a piano? Lin Linyu sighed secretly. Of course, although Yi Fuxian was strong, the person he was fighting was a talented disciple of Huasheng. Yi Fuxian looked calm. At this moment he understood a little why the teacher would lose to the painting master. The monster painted by Zhou Mu was not disturbed by the sound of the piano. Even if he destroys his body, he will continue to attack because it has no life. Existence is under the control of the summoner. Hucken's voice spell could restrain ordinary magicians and martial arts practitioners, but was summoned by summoners to restrain it. Because of this, Zhou Mu, who was in his 2 realms, destroyed his Guken in 1 hit. Is this his own power? Zhou Mu seemed to return Yi Fuxian's words to him. He stood there proudly. Although I have to be taught by my teacher, it is a pity that I am stupid and I have not learned the essence of Qin Yin's incantation. Yi Fuxian looked at Zhou Mu and said lightly, so, Qin Yin's spell is just my weakest link. Chapter 58, 1 Martial Arts. Fu Yetian's leaves fell, and the smile in the eyes of the banquet instantly hardened. I previously, Zhou Sheng, a painting student, shot and broke the piano. They wanted to make some satire to save some face. However, they haven't had time to talk yet. Yi Fuxian said a word, letting the words on their lips swallow back. Wuken sounds magical, but its weakest link. They were not arrogant and arrogant people, but their arrogance in such a way could be said to be shameless, which was unheard of. Yi Fuxian defeated two teenage geniuses with a piano sound spell, making others afraid to fight, but now he said, this is the weakest. So what were the two defeated? What kind of youth do they present? How keen is crushed and arrogant to such an extent? Is this still a face? Even the big names were stunned for a while. Did this person really just crush Guken by Zhou Mu? It's unbearable. Qin has been broken, and I dare to be so arrogant. I want to see it. Without Qin, you still have strength. Su King, who had not shot before, still wanted to fight again. He always remembers the previous battle, very unhappy. His 2-star 4 attribute mage, even without a chance to shoot, once defeated, you can imagine how uncomfortable it is. You cannot, Yi Fuxian said lightly, walking towards Zhou Mu. Zhu King came out, and the aura around his body suddenly became violent. Yi Fuxian stopped and glanced at Zhu King, only to see Zhu Qing's whole body from a thunderous light, and her eyes showed a fierce battle. In his opinion, if it wasn't for the mental power of Qin Yin's spell, it couldn't be released. Spell, how could he be defeated like that? Thunder spell, thousands of thunder lead. Everyone saw the boundless light of thunder gathered around Zhu Qing's body, like a young thunder god. The lightning light dazzled his eyes, and the endless thunder converged towards Zhu Qing's palm. I don't know how much it contains terrible power, cutting power. Yi Fuxian was a bit helpless. He also stretched out his hand. Instantly, the power of thunder ran and gathered wildly into his palm. It was only for a moment, centered in the palm of his hand, as if there was a terrifying electric current swimming in the palm of his hand. I also. Yi Fuxian's voice was calm, and everyone's faces became very extraordinary. Yi Fuxian's glorious state of victory, but the thunder power gathered by his palm is not inferior to Zhu King. The lightning light seems to be more arbitrary, and Yi Fuxian's control over the spell seems to be stronger. Zhu Qing's face was embarrassed. Yi Fuxian fought him with the same spell. Did he intentionally embarrass her? Go. A cold voice came out, a spell was released, the endless thunder turned into a very bright lightning, and he wanted to pierce through everything. The moment Qianlei was released, there was a terrifying aura of fire around his body, ready to continue casting the spell. But at this moment, Yi Fuxian's body flashed and he ran towards him with thunder. Just as the spell was about to fall, his palm extended forward. With the same spell, Yi Fuxian was released nearby, the light of thunder. Drowning everything, and seeing a figure bathed in thunder light instantly penetrated the spell and continued to advance. The next moment, Zhu Qing's body stiffened, and the gathered aura stopped. Making love in front of Zhu King, Yi Fuxian stood there leisurely, his palms facing his body, and the endless light of lightning enveloped him. As long as Yi Fuxian releases a convergent spell, it will directly penetrate his fragile body as a mage. Satisfied, the rumbling power in Yi Fuxian's hand disappeared, turned around and continued on to Zhou Mu, leaving Zhu King with a calm look. Yi Fuxian walked calmly, and the others looked at him subconsciously a little more seriously. Don't use piano voice spells, attack directly with spells, and also kill Zhu King. Wuken's voice magic is really only her weakest link. How much power does this violin disciple have? Yi Fuxian was the opposite of Zhou Mu, paused and smiled. Yi Fuxian, glory of Samsung, please enlighten me. This guy, on purpose. Everyone looked at Yi Fuxian, who didn't know that he was in the state of Samsung glory, and was officially self-reported at this time. Did Zhou Mu deliberately humiliate him? Zhou Zhumu ignored Yi Fuxian, and the aura around his body instantly flew away. Raised his hand in the void and made a painting. He drew a sword. The sword was straight and sharp. It was made of metallic aura. The sword was born and screamed. Zhou Mu will be serious. Everyone looks sharp, they have to see, how long can Yi Fuxian be arrogant? Zhou Zhumu's eyes flashed sharply, and suddenly, Jin Zhili's sword broke through and headed straight for Yi Fuxian. The speed of the sword was extremely fast. Yi Fuxian saw that the sword was coming, and his body suddenly moved. He leaned to the side, and the sword passed him, and the wind blew a few strands of hair. Ha! At this time, Yi Fuxian frowned, and there was a cold breath behind him. The sharp sword returned, and continued to kill Yi Fuxian like an eye. At the same time, another sword flew, also painted by Zhou Mu. With a single blow, the sword continued to come out. Is the sword guarded by spiritual power? Yi Fuxian secretly said in his heart that Qinyan's summoner and mage belonged to a spiritual master and possessed extremely strong mental strength. A terrifying metal storm erupted around Yi Fuxian's body, a golden barrier appeared around him, covering his entire body, as if the entire human being was covered with a layer of golden armor. The sharp sword pierced through the air and stabbed straight into the golden armor. But cannot be broken open, and finally turned into a metallic aura, and integrated into the armor. Paintings made with strokes had a limited aura, so their power was naturally not very strong. However, this is not just a sword. Zhou Mu continues to carve a sword and shoot Yi Fuxian. Around his body, he gathered a row of brilliant golden swords, and then flew towards Yi Fuxian. This time he didn't attack. But around Yi Fuxian's body, it seems to be looking for an opening to kill. At the same time, Zhou continued to paint. Yi Fuxian stared at the sharp swords flying all over his body. Then, his body stepped forward, and the wind enveloped his body. It broke instantly and headed towards Zhou. Zhou's holy disciple, a spiritual summoner, and a multi-attribute mage, but it seems that there is no martial arts, weak point, close combat. The endless whistling sharp sword seemed to have eyes, and followed Yi Fuxian's body. Several golden swords like lightning struck him across the space, but they saw Yi Fuxian's body flashing continuously, dodging each sword strike, close to Zhou. Wind appeared around Zhou Zhumu's body, wrapped around his body and retreated. It was a wind-type spell. His painting followed him. Yi Fuxian continued to move forward. All the swords this time killed Yi Fuxian, blocking all routes. This time, Yi Fuxian ignored the sword attack directly, and let it kill to attack the golden shield. As the sharp sword continued to fall, the shield broke, but Yi Fuxian seemed to appear on his body. A pair of golden wings instantly wrapped around his body, blocking the remaining sharp swords. His body continued to flicker, and finally approached Zhou. But at the same time, Zhou's painting was finished. He was a demon lion with wings, a burly body, and huge golden wings. Everyone had never seen such a monster, but a monster that was drawn by a summoner. It could be imagined by itself, and it didn't need to exist in this world. When the lion's wings flickered, they rushed towards Yi Fuxian. Everyone was shaking. Zhou is too strong. He could continue to draw summon beasts, give life to attack, and paint as he wished, plus him. This was a multi-attribute summoner and had practiced spells. It was very difficult to get close to it. Yi Fuxian watched the flying monster defeat itself, and a bright golden light was released in no time. His soul appeared, and a golden-winged rock bird appeared behind him. It is beautiful and incomparable. This kind of soul exists in Donghai Zhugon. Released, no need to hide. Destiny Witch, Soul of Fate, golden-winged dapping bird. Everyone looked at Yi Fuxian, his expression shocked. This golden-winged rock carries the dual attribute of wind and gold, but Yi Fuxian is still Qin Yin's master. Could it be that this soul gave him a spiritual attribute? The endless golden winged dual attribute storm converged on Yi Fuxian. It seemed that the martial arts were fused together. In the next moment, Yi Fuxian flapped behind his wings and brought a golden storm into the sky, as fast as lightning. Like a wind spell. At this moment, Yi Fuxian looked like a golden-winged rock bird, towering in the sky, and collided with a stunned lion, like a collision between two monsters, and disappeared in an instant. Then, everyone saw that the body of the golden-winged rock directly penetrated the body of the demon lion, and the body of the large summoned creature turned into an endless aura. Everyone who saw this scene just felt trembling. Piano musician, multi-attribute mage, martial arts practitioner, has the soul of life. Yi Fuxian is like a perfect practitioner without any weaknesses. No wonder he dares to say the sound of the piano. Spells are only its weakest link. At this moment, it seems that this is not just a rant. Jailin Ziyu also saw trembling. The handsome sunshine boy who had seen him twice was even arrogant. Nandu Wenshan was also quite restless. The disciples that Qin Demon received really seemed even more extraordinary than the sacred disciples. Yi Fuxian showed arrogance at this moment. If it is not the realm and Zhou, there is a gap. I am afraid that Zhou only a few seconds. Just this power. It seems that you can't feel where the advantages of your territory are. Yi Fuxian smiled at Zhou. Zhou's gaze was iron, and his life was also released. It was a faint figure with a pair of strange eyes that looked like a terrifying storm of mental power. This is the spiritual attribute of life and soul. Yi Fuxian feels a bit similar to his eyes on beasts, souls and soul storms. Just as Yi Fuxian was about to end the battle, he suddenly felt an invisible mental force pierce his mind, as if he was giving him some kind of warning. Chapter 59. I'm waiting for him here. Yi Fuxian stopped and felt a spiritual power. Spiritual power is an invisible power. If it is shot by a strong celestial world, it can really be realized by God. Enough, come back. A deep voice sounded directly in my mind. It was difficult to say who it was, but it seemed harmless, but persuaded him to stop. In fact, after he defeated Zhu King, he had already left and was ready to leave. However, Zhou stood up and he had to continue the fight. Master once lost to a painting master, and was even abolished, and many people today insult and paint the master. Zhou's pupil made a loud shot and shattered the piano he was playing. If he loses, he will leave. Where did the teacher put his face? Since he would be angry and furious, Zhou refused. Just as he was thinking, Zhou's painting had taken shape. This time, Zhou painted a golden dragon. It was so incomparable and unforgettable. This golden dragon floated around Zhou's body. Zhou's soul force released frantically. He descended into the golden dragon. Just like a real dragon alive, the eyes of the teenagers who were shocked by Yi Fuxian's strength lit up again. Zhou, who fought hard, was even more terrifying. Seeing this scene of Yu Fuxian's indifference, a storm of violent aura gathered on his body. The golden-winged dapping bird spread its wings, and its brilliance had reached such a point, so he had to fight to the end. Zhou Zhumu and Yu Fuxian's bodies moved at the same time. The golden dragon and the golden-winged rock bird were about to collide. The aura ran and the wind and clouds changed color. There are strong people at the banquet to release the power to block the powerful fluctuations caused by the attacks of two people. But at this time, Yu Fuxian suddenly felt another mental power invasion. This time, without any reminder, he attacked head-on. Yu Fuxian only felt a tingling paralysis in his spirit, as if he was about to lose consciousness, and was already with Zhou Mu. Suddenly he couldn't control the flow of Reiki. Bang! With a loud bang, Yu Fuxian didn't know how the punch came out. At that critical moment, he was secretly attacked, which caused the power of the blow to weaken even more. The golden dragon exploded, and Zhou Mu and Yu Fuxian's bodies receded at the same time. All of this happened in a very short time. Yu Fuxian fell after falling to the ground. Without any anger, a smile slowly appeared on his face. There were a lot of big guys here at the Raja's house birthday party. There are challenges from the next generation. The big men naturally couldn't draw their faces, but they couldn't do it clearly. Some people attack secretly. It seemed that the person who kindly reminded him had foresight. However, who reminded him? Who planned it? Of course he won't be stupid enough to make accusations. The other party is afraid that Zhengqiu can't find a reason to deal with him. He dares to blame the big names for plotting, and he can justify him with slander. Teacher. Yu Fuxian smiled. When he said the word, tutor, he did not look at Zhou Mu, but at the big people present. What it means is that the people who attack him understand naturally. Today I had to interrupt Wang Yi's birthday party. Fortunately, Wang Yi was generous and didn't care about his juniors, so he withdrew. Yu Fuxian smiled, saluted, and then turned around intelligently, without continuing the fight. The other party already used this method, and then only he lost the battle. The battle isn't over yet, will you go? Zhou Mu seemed to be facing Yu Fuxian because of the confidence he just hit. Zhou Mu, it's fine. Hua Sheng said weakly. Zhou Mu's expression was stagnant, then he looked back at Yu Fuxian and said, if there is an opportunity in the future, he will do his best to finish the unfinished battle. Okay, the inconvenience of Wang Yi's birthday banquet is too much, and only 50% of his strength has been given. When you fight again, you will understand. Yu Fuxian's figure gradually drifted away. A very frivolous voice came to Zhou Mu's face. His expression instantly became very attractive. He mistreated him in such a way today. How could Yu Fuxian dare to say that he only played 50% of his strength? No more words. Crazy. A voice came out, and someone said coldly, this son was rejected by Zhou Mu, and the senior painter is reluctant to embarrass him, even if he does not know what he is grateful for. Shameless person. The sarcastic voice continued. Zhou Mu is brilliant and worthy of being brother Hua. Lord Luo praised him, and many people echoed it, but at this moment, everyone had their own thoughts. Although they praised Zhou Mu in their mouths, they had many things in mind. Even if Zhou Mu finally it really repelled Yu Fuxian's attack, but it is difficult to say who won and who lost, let alone Zhou Mu's realm, to Gao Yu Fuxian's realm. Therefore, there is nothing praiseworthy for this battle. Chia Fan's face was extremely cold. He knew that he had not really known Yu Fuxian before. This person has such talent. No wonder Qin Mo took him as a disciple and went crazy for him. It seems that this child needs to be eliminated as soon as possible. Can't let it grow. In this banquet, apart from the painting festival and Yu Fuxian's teacher, Qin Mo, others have no complaints with Yu Fuxian. Although he was a little embarrassed by Yu Fuxian today, it was actually not a deep hatred. Don't worry about Yu Fuxian. He is different. Once Yu Fuxian grows up, he will definitely want his life. I didn't expect Yu Fuxian to be able to fight Zhou Mu, but he has some talent. No wonder Qin Mo would accept him as a disciple, and when he was in Qingzhou City, I saw that this man spoke eloquently about YGG. The relationship between the two is very afraid to be coaxed by him, he might be in a bad mood. At this moment Chia Fan spoke lightly, and when he said this, many eyes were on Chia Fan's body. This person seems to be hated by Yu Fuxian. Hua Jiu is the gold of the Nandu family. After listening to everyone say that her talent is very good, Nandu should take care of her. Lord Luo started to say. Nandu Wenshan seemed to blink and smiled at Lord Luo. The king reminded him, but flowers. At first, Xiu trained in Qingzhou City with Qin Demon. This son is Qin Demon's disciple. The relationship between the two is also normal, but I will remind Xiu if I have the chance. I believe brother Nandu has his own decisions. Lord Luo nodded gently, thought about the painting of the sacred eye next to him, and then said lightly, he didn't come to the palace to celebrate his birthday. If I guess correctly, interest will be received. Wang's injuries must be healed. Lord Luo's eyes lit up and he said, you mean, he intends to ask me to heal him? Yes. Hua Sheng nodded his head, thinking that Yu Fuxian declared war because of the keen demon's insults. He couldn't help but say, "Flower style is a good apprentice." Yi Huasheng praised Yu Fuxian in private, but everyone was not good at answering. Zhou Mu, you are going to Zibai Palace at Takai Academy tomorrow to train. The painting master suddenly opened. His voice was dull, as if he could only enter the Zibai Palace with a word, without having to go through the examination. In addition, the big people present did not feel strange, as if it was a very normal thing. Even the old man in Zibai Palace did not think there was a problem. I'm afraid this is because Yu Fuxian never thought about it. Okay, Zhou Mu nodded. The Nandu family's Waji language was also in the Zibai Palace, and that Yu Fuxian was also in the East China Sea Palace. Congratulations to Zibai Palace for accepting another master. Master Luo smiled at the old man in Zibai Palace. Jaylin Ziyu had been watching all this quietly. A noble and peerless figure in her mind appeared, and the reckless man was afraid that he did not know the relationship between Zibai Palace, painting master, and Lord Luo. Fortunately, the man was also smart, careless, and very careful. He hasn't left anything to be desired. Public events like Wangsho Ban are harmless, but I am afraid that some people have been offended. The banquet continued, but the atmosphere at the start was gone. Today Lord Luo was supposed to be the absolute protagonist, but the limelight was stolen by the young man. Yu Fuxian had been riding the black wind carving on the way back to the East China Sea Academy, and the wind was blowing in his body, making his mind clearer. Of course he knows that today's shot was a bit frivolous, but when he saw that the painting master was respected and the painting master held by the public, his teacher had been abolished and he was humiliated and ridiculed for departing from the painting master. That's really intolerable. This time, I'm afraid I've offended some people. Yu Fuxian whispered. Be careful in the future, especially Chia Fan. After seeing this battle, he would definitely want his life. It is good to face oneself, but not necessarily behind, as can be seen from the previous battle which affected both him and Zhou Mu with mental attacks. The person who shot me is the painting teacher or Master Luo. Yu Fuxian thought to himself, these two are spiritual masters. Remind me that it should be the predecessor of Zibai Palace. Yu Fuxian secretly analyzed in his heart. Donghai Zugong. When Yu Fuxian returned to Zugong, many people looked at him and whispered something, and now many people know him in Donghai Zugong. However, Yu Fuxian did not care, and continued to move forward. But as he walked, there were several figures blocking him in front of him. Yu Fuxian. The person moved slightly. There is something wrong. Yu Fuxian looked at the other side. He had never seen it before. I am the palace greedy wolf that Jingyang invited to fight against you. Why should I avoid war? The other party asked. Yu Fuxian glanced at the other side, only feeling a little bored, so he didn't care, and walked past him. The so-called lack of time is just an excuse for cowardice. You entered Wakur Palace because you defeated my greedy wolf palace disciples. Now you are very embarrassed after entering East China Sea Palace. Are you afraid of being exposed? As a Wakur Palace disciple, don't you think that too? Wakur Palace's face. The man continued to Yu Fuxian. Many people looked this way, and then they saw Yu Fuxian stop, facing away from the greedy wolf palace, and said coldly, I'm not in a good mood right now, so you better shut up and don't mention it to me anymore. Challenge it or you will regret it. He said. He continued to raise his pace to leave, but the man looked relentless and smiled. Escape from the courage to fight can be so easy and eye-opening. Yu Fuxian's steps fell again, and everyone saw him turn around slowly. A bright smile slowly appeared on his face, and said, Tell Jingyang, I will wait for him here. Chapter 60. Brother, Shackles. The news of Yu Fuxian's challenge spread instantly in the East China Sea Academy, causing waves, and many people gathered towards Yu Fuxian. Not long ago, Yu Fuxian entered the Wakur Palace. The news of the next Jingyang battle had caused many waves in the East China Sea Academy. Yu Fuxian's sentence of no time left many people speechless, while Jingyang's sentence of only was nothing but pride. One was a demon who first entered Wakur Palace, and the other was a genius who trained at the peak of the Greedy Wolf Palace. The two spoke separately. Yu Fuxian is too lazy to ignore that he must not fight, and they can only hold their breath, and the humiliation at that time can never be recovered. Until today, Yu Fuxian was provoked by the Greedy Wolf Palace, and ended up fighting aggressively. At this time, Yu Fuxian was surrounded by many people. He stood there weakly, standing with both hands, looking off into the distance, like a peerless teacher. Guys can be too pretentious, right? Many people in the Greedy Wolf Palace arrived one after another, looking coldly into Yu Fuxian's eyes. Jingyang was the personal disciple of the big man above the Greedy Wolf Palace. With his shot, Yu Fuxian would lose. There were also many people in the Wakur Palace. They hoped that Yu Fuxian would win. After all, Yu Fuxian is their disciple in the Wakur Palace, so they cannot weaken the strength of the Wakur Palace. Shi Muyun King, Mu Yun's brothers and sisters also came. They looked coldly into Yu Fuxian's eyes, and they were looking forward to the next battle. Jingyang is training in the Greedy Wolf Palace, so come slowly. It took a long time before I saw a group of Palace Greedy Wolf disciples around Jingyang. They came here with great momentum. The people watching the crowd gave way and the people in the Wolf Palace stopped. Jingyang came forward alone and Yi Fuxian was waiting there. Do you finally dare to fight? A disdainful smile appeared on Jingyang's face, and he was quite surprised to learn that Yi Fuxian had fought. Don't talk nonsense, I've wasted a lot of time, are you ready to be harassed? Yi Fuxian's gaze fell on Jingyang for the first time. With just one sentence, Jingyang was caught instantly. This what's up? The crowd watching the crowd also looked at Yi Fuxian stunned, which was disdainful. Jingyang, a disciple of the Greedy Wolf Palace, is hated by Yi Fuxian so much, it is as if he is waiting for Jingyang here is a waste of time, thinking of ending it soon. When I thought of Yi Fuxian's four-character response, no time, everyone just fell silent. It turned out that this man did not place Jingyang in his eyes at all. The expressions on the faces of the people who came to the Greedy Wolf Palace were very beautiful, and they had never seen such a madman. Jingyang looked at Yi Fuxian and sneered, I saw you like this for the first time. He didn't say a word, then saw Yi Fuxian's body had moved, like a bolt of lightning straight at him. The unfinished words had to be swallowed back. Jingyang's face was extremely ugly, and the aura around his body ran away. Thousands of silk wounds. Jingyang's words fell, and he saw the metallic aura turned into countless golden silk threads, inevitably tangling towards Yi Fuxian's body, directly blocking the space. Jingyang has actually become a magical touch. Many people were quite surprised. Spells are also difficult. 1,000 twists must be a difficult spell, and they have very high requirements for mental restraint. They have to control everything. Golden silk thread, but its strength is also extraordinary, it can trap people and kill people. Yi Fuxian's flashing body appeared like a golden wing that was transformed by the aura, cutting forward. Wherever he passed, Qianxi was instantly cut off, and seemed to have no effect in the face of absolute power. Jingyang's appearance changed slightly. Qian injured thousands of threads to stab Yi Fuxian. Her body pulled back sharply, but saw Yi Fuxian's wings erected, cutting the spell directly, while Yang's speed was extreme, like an afterimage. The next moment, Jingyang saw a fist hit him. Nothing fancy, just a simple and punkless punch. Bang! Didn't give Jingyang a little reaction time, and there was no tension. Jingyang was hit to the ground, blood splattered. He was the Samsung state of glory, and now Yi Fuxian. In the same realm, Yi Fuxian is really too lazy to waste time. However, he did not accept the challenge, and the people in the Greedy Wolf Palace seemed to have given up, so they had to finish it. Fist also seems to hit people's hearts. The people watching only feel the heart tremble. This is a spike. Next, they saw Yi Fuxian raise his fist, and another fist crashed. The pounding sound continued, and every time it was heard, people's hearts skipped a beat. Now, is that cool? Yi Fuxian uttered an indifferent voice. This, everyone was completely dumbfounded. It's just torture. No wonder he asked Jingyang to be prepared to be harassed. I saw Jingyang being tortured on the ground. People just find it weird. The disciple of the Greedy Wolf personal disciple, before angrily saying that Yi Fuxian is a young genius. There he is. It really was that, but Jingyang seemed to be talking about himself. Stop it. Seeing this scene, the Greedy Wolf Palace only felt an inner spasm and roared furiously. Yi Fuxian stood up, looked at the Greedy Wolf Palace, and sneered, this is the result you want, happy. He said. He lifted his leg and left, watching the back of his departure. The people in the Greedy Wolf Palace even forgot to come forward to help Jingyang, standing there and feeling countless eyes staring at them. The atmosphere was indescribable. Is this the result they want? As long as Yi Fuxian is still in the East China Sea Palace for one day, the shame of the Greedy Wolf Palace is afraid that it can't be swept away. Yi Fuxian stormed Jingyang out of breath, and his mood seemed better even though she was very beautiful in the palace. She was always depressed, especially the teacher's injury broke her hopes. When I returned to where I lived, I found there was an extra person in the courtyard. He spent the rest of his life with him, but at this moment there was a figure beside him. Yi Fuxian saw this figure. He was right there, blinking constantly, as if he thought he was wrong. I looked at the figure next to me at this time. It turned out to be a girl around 16 years old. This girl is small and beautiful, her appearance is pure and beautiful. At a glance, he could feel that her character was very gentle. I feel like I feel something. All my life and the girl looked up at the same time, and then they saw Yi Fuxian back. The young girl looked at Yi Fuxian with a gentle smile, and opened her mouth for the rest of her life, as if she wanted to explain something. You continue. Yi Fuxian turned around and was about to leave. Wait. A soft voice came out. Yi Fuxian stopped and saw the girl smiling at him. Her smile was more youthful and beautiful, gentle and pleasant. That's not what you think. The rest of his life said at this time. Yi Fuxian looked at him and smiled. Which one do I want? For the rest of my life, I didn't know what to say. Where is the opponent? King Xuan came to us, the rest of his life began. King Xuan, the surname is all safe, the speed of development. You can do it for the rest of your life. Yi Fuxian's eyes were very bright, and the rest of his face darkened. I asked him to scream. The girl smiled gently. I'm Yi King Xuan, just call me King Xuan. My name is Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian stepped forward and smiled. I know. Yi King Xuan nodded. When you first came to Donghai Zugong to fight with the people of Greed Wolf Palace, I saw it on the side. You are very good. The rest of my life is better than mine. Yi Fuxian smiled. The rest of his life is always black. Why did he drag her? You are all amazing. Yi King Xuan was still smiling. The rest of my life is not only terrible, but I don't have a boyfriend. Yi Fuxian smiled brightly, and the rest of his life had the urge to run away. Yi King Xuan blinked and smiled slightly. You are so cute, I won't bother you, see you later. He said, walking towards the outside. When he passed by Yi Fuxian, he only heard Yi Fuxian whisper softly, what do you think of the other members of our family? Yi Xuan blushed slightly and whispered, very good. He said. He kept his feet up and left from here. The smile on Yi Fuxian's face became brighter, and he looked at the rest of his life with a smile, saying, for the rest of your life, you were very smart when I left. Where did you go? Yu Yusheng was silent and said, he came to ask us if we want to accept the judgment to go to Wakir Palace to practice. He's on top. Yi Fuxian was curious. I shouldn't have asked carefully, said the rest of his life. It seems that the identity is unusual, and the words are gentle, and they look good, and they smile very sweetly. I think it is very good. Do you have any ideas? Yi Fuxian laughed and looked at the rest of his life. I don't know what you're saying, said the rest of his life. I'm trying it now, but she's blushing. Maybe it really means something to you, so you don't feel that way. Yi Fuxian continued to push. I said it last time, my father didn't let me talk about my children's private affairs, and he asked me to accompany you into the world. The rest of his life said earnestly. Yi Fuxian saw the serious look of his life and couldn't help but joke, and said, for the rest of my life, I know that Godly Father has high hopes for me, but the road is long and the future is too far away. I didn't know I could walk. At which step, the prince will be too far from me, the road of life is long, and on the strong road, I hope you will accompany me to share the prosperity of the world, she can happy, then live for me. Life for you was my father's will, and I was born to do that. I said that now the righteous father does not listen to me at all, does not care about the words of the righteous father. Yi Fuxian suddenly shouted. The rest of his life froze, seeing Yi Fuxian's angry face. He couldn't help but lower his head, but still stubborn. Stand there. Seeing the appearance of the rest of the life, Yi Fuxian couldn't help but feel a little tender, and whispered, for the rest of my life, let go of the shackles that your godly father gave you. I hope you are happy and have your own life. Even if you leave me one day, I will for you. And happy. Yu Sheng raised his head and saw the smile on Yi Fuxian's face. His eyes were slightly red, and his heart said in his heart, there will never be this day.